and the future. And as each of us hold bits of those baskets, and as we share those baskets together, the whole point of it was to make this world a better place. And so hopefully we can make Tāmaki more economically viable, that we can make Aotearoa viable, and perhaps we'll even be able to make this world a better place. So let's give thanks this morning for those baskets of knowledge. So kei mua tātou. Let us give thanks. Tēnei au, ko te hokai nei I taku wai. Ko te hokai nuku, ko te hokai rangi, ko te hokai au to tupuna tāne nui arami. I pikitia ai ki ngā rangi tū a, ki te hio manono, I roko inga tūrā, ko I matua kore ana ke, I rirui hoana na kete o te wānanga, ko te kete tuauri, ko te kete tuatea, ko te kete aranui. Ka tiritiria, ka paupaua ki a whapā atua nuku. Ka puta te ira tangata ki te whai ao, ki te ao marama. Tūturu o whiti whakamaua ki a tīna I tīna. Haumi e hui no reira, I ngā mana, I ngā reo, auranga tirama, ka tū whare ki tēnei nui o Ngāti Whātua I mui a koutou. No reira, ka mihi tonu ki a koutou katoa. Ngā rangatira, ngā tuakana, ka meana tukau ture anō te pai, anō te āhuareka, o te nohanga ngā teimanu ngā tuakana I roto te whakarokotai. No reira, ka mihi tonu ki a koutou. Ngā tuakana o te moana nui a kiwa kua tai I roto tēnei huihuinga. No reira, ka huri anō ki a tāpane Queenie Māori. Me ki tūheitia ki te rangi, ngā waihono, te pō, ki te whenua, no reira ki te whare āriki o potatau te whirowhiro te tūwaru, ka mihi tonu ki a rātau o te kāhui āriki me ki rire.
Ka tangi te titi, ka tangi te kāka, ka tangi ko a hau ti hei mauri ora. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā hau e whā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko te mea tuatahi, tēnei tumihi atu ki a koe e ana tira, e whaiwhikau, e hoa, Reverend o tēnei reo iti. Kaumātua o Ngāti Whātua with such a deep and booming voice, the dulcet tones who has become the face and the voice of the council group. Friend of the 685 and true advocate for the Pacific, tēnā rawa atu koe. Ko te mea tuarua, no ia mālo ni, ki o rana mauri whakarowhangahi atu ni sa ula vinaka, whakatāna wharawa, halo keta mahota mawai pongpongini and, well, my name is Taito Erituiavi and I'll be your MC this morning. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today to the second Auckland Pacific Economic Insights event, focused on supporting the growth of Auckland's Pacific economy. Today's event aims to elevate Auckland's Pacific voice and to share our collective aspirations and expectations for Pacific presence and participation in the future of Tāmaki Makaurau, the place you and I call home. The Pacific Insights series enables Auckland Council's Economic Development Office to support the vision of its Te Ulewa work program, supporting Pacific people to have economic choice and live socially and economically prosperous lives in Tāmaki Makaurau. Today we deliver the second of 3 Pacific Economic Insights series breakfast events. If you haven't managed to grab some breakfast, don't be shy, there's plenty at the back. We explore the challenges and opportunities for Pasifika people. We showcase best practice. We identify strategic priority areas for collaboration. We position the Auckland Economic Development Office as a trusted leader and to identify future partnership opportunities. Finally, we look to shake up and change both narratives and perceptions of Pacifica people in Tāmaki Makaurau. Before we begin in earnest, some housekeeping. If it's sharp, leave it alone. If it's hot, don't touch it. If it smolders, don't inhale it. If it burns, move away from it. If it looks like you'll trip, don't walk over it. Bathrooms are located at the back of this room. When you came in the main doors, they were on your left. Therefore, when you exit the room, they'll be located on your right. Thank you for those of you that mouthed left. If there is an emergency, please follow the instructions of staff who will guide you to the assembly point in Aotea Square. Speaking of Aotea Square, I see a lot of event staff that are around. A big mihi to our hosts for today's seating arrangements. I don't know about you, but these seats are awfully low, they're wobbly, and everyone has to sit carefully. Thank you though, Aotea, for enabling us to say, regardless of how today goes, at least we had them on the edge of their seats for the entire time. Health and safety, there's no smoking or vaping inside Aotea Centre. If you wish to do so, the nearest point to do so is in Point Chev. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mary Lawson, the Chief Executive of Pacific Business Trust in Auckland. Mary brings the wealth of experience from both the private and public sectors and holds an MBA from the University of Auckland. PDT is the Pacific Economic Development Agency in New Zealand, whose role is to empower Pacific-owned businesses to thrive through a range of free tailored programs and services. PDT supports all types of Pacific-owned businesses, from sole traders to large corporations, not including churches. Speaking to us about harnessing Pacific potential into long-term prosperity, all my Tāmaki Paki for Mary Lawson.
Hori taku tira ki te waka ki te papa e mahu e ake aku tūpuna, kua riro atu ki te pōriuri ki te pōtangotango hi anu i te pō. Pai te tutaki e koutou i raro i te kaupapa o tēnei wā, i tēnei rā mo te whanaungatanga. Whakawhitai mo tō karakia o tēnei tina koe. E mihi tēnei ki a koe te rangatira Phil Morena, tēnā koutou and warm Pacific greetings. Good morning, everyone. It's a real honour to join you here today at the Economic Insights series, a space where ideas are shaped, where collaboration takes form, and where the future of Tāmaki Makaurau is imagined and built. As the Chief Executive of the Pacific Business Trust, I stand here today carrying the hopes of our clients, the entrepreneurs of PDT, the strength of our communities, and the responsibility of a national mandate that we are humbled to hold. I believe green is fought. Thanks for your patience. Auckland is at a turning point, a city of immense diversity, youthful energy, though we could do with a lot more youthful energy in the room today, looking out at everyone. I don't see many sub-40s in the room, so we're a youthful energy out there, and entrepreneurial ambition. A city where Pacific people, our people, are not just participants in the economy, but an engine for growth. The Pacific Business Trust is very proud to stand as the government's Aotearoa New Zealand's National Pacific Economic Development Agency, and even more proud to serve as the government's sole national provider of Pacific business support across the country. This is more than just a title. It is a signal, a recognition of Pacific excellence, and a clear call to action. It tells us that our time is not coming. It tells us our time is now. Because someone has struck me on where to... Do I have to click there? Okay. Our time is coming. Our work and our impact. At PDT, everything we do is anchored in our three strategic outcomes, the PO, that guide our mission and our investment and our partnerships. Here's number one, building capability and resilience. Capability is the foundation of our confidence. Resilience is the shield that allows our businesses to weather the storms. We see Pacific entrepreneurs who not only carry financial risk, but cultural and farmer responsibility too, and navigate the challenges of being small in scale, yet enormous in heart. Through our business advisory services, capability programs, digital upskilling, procurement readiness, leadership pathways, and our AI capability coming very soon with our new partner, Whaivale. I believe the young New Zealander of the Year, Iterua, and her business partner, Julia, will be joining us shortly. Those workshops will be coming out to our community shortly. We help our people build their basket of knowledge, as referenced by Reverend Ortini, so they not only merely survive, but truly thrive. All Stone and Rock, we supported the writing of their RFP, which was a multi-million-dollar contract. They won it. We sat around the table for hours with them, and we sat around for many more hours without them. My colleague Tracy is here with me, very long days and early mornings to get that RFP in. Writing an RFP is a technical process, and for those of you who have been through it and done it, you'll know expertise doesn't always sit inside your own business and not inside many of our small to medium-sized enterprises. However, the technical expertise does sit in PBT. We spent many hours writing that, and all Stone and Rock were successful. So every rock wall that you see around the Auckland airport has been built by All Stone and Rock. We pitched their business success story to the Business Herald. They picked that story up and wrote it. When that story ran, it had over 400,000 views, and the former All Black and his beautiful billionaire wife Anna Mowbray saw that story, and they contacted All Stone and Rock and asked them to build all of the rock walls around their beautiful big mansion in Westmere. That contract was more than the airport contract. So Laniki Tangi called Tracy and invited the team over to the site, which is the photos there, to thank us because their business has quadrupled. The pleasure is all ours. Here's the second poem. Pacific success has always been collective. We weave together our networks that PBT, its government, iwi, corporates, academia, community, the Auckland Chamber, all sorts. But we go there to sit at the table, to shape the table, not just to be at the table. Our partnership with Amotai is here today, I saw you somewhere. Our collaboration across all agencies, our work in procurement and innovation. We've partnered with Becca, Downer, Spark, Business New Zealand, the Auckland Chamber, and the 20 other economic development agencies across the country. All of it is grounded in a simple belief. When we walk together in partnership, we go further. We are in our community in Aotearoa, from Kaikooi all the way down to Invercargill. Auckland's economic transformation depends on partnership. We can't do it on our own, but it depends on partnership that is dependable, intentional, and future-focused. Our final poem is maximising Pacific contribution to the economy. The Pacific economy is a force, youthful, creative, global, culturally rich, and economically powerful. PBT supports more than 2,000 Pacific-owned, tax-paying, registered businesses that collectively generate just over $1.5 billion annually. We are across 21 industries. More than 70% of our businesses are located in the broader Tāmaki region. I can tell you the ownership structure, the ethnic ownership structure of that business, the sector that business is in, the sector inside that region, year-on-year growth of that business, and then compare it to a national average of a Balinese business. That's what that tells us. It's taken 2 years to build that, and I had to poach a senior data analyst from KPMG to help me build it. And she's great. When the economy grows, Auckland grows. When Pacific businesses expand, communities flourish. And when Pacific excellence is enabled, Aotearoa becomes stronger. Every Pacific business embodies generations of faith, sacrifice, and aspiration. When we support one Pacific entrepreneur, we uplift their aina, their whānau, a community, and we lift for the next generation. That is why Pacific Business Trust's mahi and our service is so important to this country. That's why our kaupapa is bigger than us. That's why we need partners. I'm glad Phil's in the room because if Auckland wants to grow a stronger economy, it must invest in the people who are already investing in it. Its workers, the entrepreneurs, the creators, the communities who call this beautiful city home. Pacific people are not on the sidelines of Auckland's economy. We are shaping it, building it, and we are driving it. Auckland's economy and its success cannot be separated from Pacific success. Auckland has an opportunity to grow right now, to create a more inclusive, more resilient, and more prosperous economy. And I know that the Pacific Business Trust, alongside the many partners, many of which are in the room today, will help lead that transformation. Together, we can build capability. Together, we can deepen partnership. Together, we can grow the Pacific economy. The Pacific Business Trust, growing Pacific success together. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Thank you.
Mano Vito, thank you very much, Mary. The little exchange, they were just asking us, do we exit stage right now or later? To which I replied, you are Mary Oste, you are Mato Otene, you can do whatever you want. Thank you very much for your insights this morning. Two things I wish to touch on. There is the wheel that has been laid. For many years we weren't at the table, we were on the menu. Now it's no longer enough just to be at the table, you have to shape the table. Secondly, a big shout out to those of us who actually are under 40 and to the rest of you who are youth adjacent. Thank you both for your contributions this morning. It is now my great pleasure and privilege to introduce somebody who is a trailblazer in his own right. Mary referenced the Chief Executive Officer for Te Kaunihera o Tāmaki Makaurau, Phil Wilson. Now, I've got a brief here. I've got things that I ought to say about him to introduce him, but, you know, I might be so bold as to say he doesn't need an introduction. There's two things that are very important in the Pacific space. One is your presence. When you show up, it shows that you care. And secondly, in the Samoan language, e tautala ngā luenga. Your works speak for themselves. I now like to introduce, I call him my work uncle, all right, and I finally dub him Peter. Here to offer his insights about Auckland Council's role in supporting the Pacific economy, ho mai te paki for Uncle Peter.
Whatever. Talofa lava, malawa lelei, ki rana, whakamaka lahi atu, warm and big greetings to everyone. It's really nice to be with you. E whare tūnei, in mana whenua Ngāti Whātua, tēnā koutou katoa. A few acknowledgements. Just calling out Councillors Josephine Bartley and Andy Baker. Thank you for your support and for being here. And I notice Simon and Pulu and I saw Makalita somewhere. Our local board representatives with us. And of course, more generally, a lot of awesome leaders in your own right. It's nice that we're here. I do acknowledge Taito Eddie for your contribution, Eddie, not just today, but generally. Otene, a true friend of the city and a great colleague, and Mary, you and your team at the Pacific Business Trust, you know, a special shout out. And I could probably dispense with my speech and just say kind of what she said, because there's really good alignment in thinking. I won't do that, of course. I'll cover a few things. It is a real privilege to speak to you today about this topic. It is, in my view, central really to Auckland's identity and future, and I'll sort of explain the thinking there from my perspective. Supporting the Pacific economy. I do. Eddie kind of mentioned this, but it is a kaupapa that I've got sort of a real, I suppose, personal interest in the role that I have, and given the significance of the Pacific community in Tāmaki. And it's good that we're here today to kind of explore what that might look like. I start from the premise that Auckland, Tāmaki needs to increasingly be New Zealand's powerhouse in terms of the economy. That's if we want both regionally, locally, but also nationally to be the sort of first world economy, the inclusive economy that we want to be. We are regionally, we're a third of the national population, and we account for about 38% of GDP nationally. So we punch above our weight, you could say. But here's the thing, we need to do better overall. There's this, and apologies for the jargon, but there's this term prime cities. So the cities that represent the sort of engine room of an economy in a sort of modern world. Right, prime cities typically have about a 10 to 15% productivity dividend. Okay, so that number that I talked about, 33% of the national population, 38% and growing of GDP, needs to be transformed into 10 to 15% of margin. That's what happens when we take advantage of our scale, what is called the agglomeration effect. Not too much of a textbook reading here for you, but you understand the point. If we want the new higher value industries, which are fueled by innovation and technology, underpinned by education, that's what we need if we want the better outcomes for the city. The other thing we've got to focus on, frankly, is that we need all communities to benefit equitably in the opportunity. And I won't dwell on this. You know the story in terms of income disparity and unemployment and what have you. It gets a bit depressing when you focus on that. But if we frame it as an opportunity, then things start to be a little bit more lifting of our collective spirits, right? According to the 2023 census, 275,000 Aucklanders identify as Pacific people. So that's just a tad under 17% of our population. And Mary referenced this, but that proportion has increased 13% since 2018. So it's growing faster than the national average. And therefore has something youthful. My wife, by the way, would like it to grow a little bit faster if my son could get a slightly more steady girlfriend. So see me afterwards if you've got... almost 2/3 of the New Zealand population, of the entire Pacific population, live here in Tāmaki. But our strength doesn't just lie in those numbers. It is a fact, which I think we do celebrate, perhaps should celebrate more, that diversity, that Pacific influence on the city makes us absolutely more vibrant, resilient, and in future will help make us more globally competitive. I totally agree with Mary in that regard. The Pacific economy, isn't niche. It is and needs to be seen as a central pillar of Auckland's prosperity, where our Pacific communities contribute to the vibrancy, the social fabric, the economic strength of the region. And I don't just mean that, you'll know what I mean. I don't just mean that as a trope or a vague notion about Pacific communities adding colour to the city. That's frankly a bit patronising. I'm talking about entrepreneurs, innovators and leaders in all sectors, from construction to hospitality to creative industries and technology. And going back to demographics, again agreeing with Mary, our Pacific community is beautifully placed to be both the driving force and the beneficiary of that. Why? Again, because of its youth and because it brings something different to the thinking about what the future might be and where those opportunities for industry exist. The reality is that more than half of all Pacific people in Aotearoa under the age of 25 exist in Tāmaki. Okay, so it's not just a youthful community, but it is particularly so in our Auckland context. We just have to get the education aspect right. So it is great. I saw the attendance list, and it's wonderful that sector is represented here because it's so important. This growth dynamic is an opportunity for employers to harness the talent. Just jumping a little bit forward, to the Auckland Council role, and I'm not going to go on too much about this, but from our perspective, our role is really clear. We're here to enable, to empower, to partner, to support Pacific communities so they can thrive. It's not just about economic growth, it's about equity and opportunity and ensuring voices are heard in decision making for the city, both within council and outside. I acknowledge some strategies that we have in place. Ara Moana, Council's Pacific framework that charts pathways for Pacific peoples to thrive, and Tūle Vā, Pacific Work Program initially developed by Tāmaki Auckland, and just acknowledging Pam here, residing within our Economic Development Office now. Together they demonstrate Auckland Council's commitment to embedding Pacific people's outcomes in economic development. We've got a bunch of other things. This series, this economic development Pacific Focus series is part of it. There are some great things happening. We recently won the Supreme Award at the Economic Development New Zealand Excellence Awards for Project Akuna. I saw on the program there's a feature of that through the morning, so that's awesome. Organisationally, I'm proud that there's some stuff happening in terms of leadership development pipelines, in terms of workforce development and what have you, and that's great. I could go on, and not to particularly skye about those things. Just a couple of final points. I would make the offer that as much as there's some good things happening, if there are opportunities identified where the council can practically support, then we want to hear that. And I know that our elected members in the round support that. So please don't be shy in identifying ways in which the council can support. So look, in summary, supporting Auckland's Pacific economy is not just good policy, it's good for Auckland, and it builds up our prosperity, our resilience, our strength as a community. When our Pacific communities feel included and empowered, we are a stronger place for it. So, Kia kaha, thank you for your work. It is awesome to be with you, and I hope you have a really productive morning and a really productive discussion. I know you will, frankly. Whawhatai lava.
Mahalo whakatai, Phil, for your kōrero, for your taha noa this morning. Two things that I wanted to pick on briefly. You would have heard, if you listened carefully to Phil's kōrero this morning, that Auckland Council is here to enable, empower, engage and support Pacific people and economies. If you'd like a subsidy in your rates, contact Auckland Council. Secondly, you would have heard this beautiful sun is currently on the market. I know just the person. Well, the number to contact is 021 Phil's wife mine is Samoan, so Samoans only need apply. Right. We're going to switch it up now and talk about the Arawaka Auckland program for Pacific. And so as I make this introduction, I'll invite also Ben to make his way to stage now. Ben Tafau has led a number of projects on local, regional and national events, focusing on improving the holistic well-being of Pacific peoples in Aotearoa, New Zealand. His main experience has been in the public health field and is enjoying the opportunity to help improve the well-being of Pacific communities by supporting them to realise their economic aspirations. I've got more wonderful things here to say about you, brother, but in the interest of time, I'd probably prefer to yield the time to you for your kōrero. You'll see a lot of other beautiful faces on the stage today. I won't be introducing them, but following Ben, we'll have the beautiful, the bold, the wonderful Sarah here that will introduce them. Now, for those of you that are here today, Sarah needs no introduction. Her official title is Manager Economic Development for Pacific, but more than that, she bleeds this work. She loves this work and she embodies this work. She's understated, and if you notice in my notes, there's nothing in here that pays homage to the work that she does. But Sarah, because when you have the mic, you can say whatever you want. I will come back to the acknowledgement of you. Hōmai te paki paki for Ben.
Tara whalawa, malo le suifua, tēnā koutou katoa, and warm Pacific greetings to you all. As the slide says, I'm Ben Tafau, Program Manager in the Maunganui Pacific Policy and Programs team in MB, and it's an honour to be here today to share the story of the Arawaka program. So Pacific people in New Zealand, as we've discussed so far this morning, are a young and growing population will make up a significant part of Auckland's future workforce. Yet many of our people remain concentrated in low-wage, low-skilled roles, making them more vulnerable to economic shocks, such as the global financial crisis, COVID, and subsequent economic recessions. And this is reinforced with Pacific unemployment, currently at 12.1%, double the national average and the highest of any ethnic group in New Zealand. Pacific women are often concentrated in caring professions such as nursing, caregiving, and education, where they may face lower wages and limited opportunities for advancement. While Pacific men are likely to be employed in industries such as construction, manufacturing, and transportation, which may offer higher wages but also carry greater risks of unemployment during economic downturns. And the push for automation and the adoption of AI also risk jobs that many Pacific people are employed in. The long-term economic outcomes for Pacific peoples in New Zealand are shaped by a combination of factors, including health and poverty-related stress, cultural responsibilities and expectations, the skills and qualifications gap between Pacific and the general population, systemic barriers, the rise in cost of living, economic activities, informal economic activities such as caregiving and community work, and the struggle to build intergenerational wealth. The origins of Arawaka were born from the 2018 Pacific People's Workforce Challenge report, which discussed how to create public value from a different approach to increasing Pacific people's workplace readiness, skills, earning power, progression, and business ownership. One of the key findings in that report was that Pacific employees often have hidden skills and knowledge from what they do at home and in their communities. When they're empowered to use those skills, businesses thrive and so do they. When businesses help create opportunities for employment and development, they also benefit from the loyalty, skills, work ethic, and creativity that Pacific employees bring. In May 2020, MB received $22 million over 4 years for the design and delivery of Arawaka, the Auckland Pacific Skill Shift. The overarching strategic objective of the program is to create the enabling conditions for Pacific workers, communities and families in South and West Auckland to identify and follow skills pathways for higher quality, better paid employment for Pacific, employment opportunities. So the program goals for Arawaka were to address in-work training systems gaps for Pacific workers, provide them with skills and experience for transition into higher quality employment, understand and address key barriers for Pacific workers and their whānau, develop insights on how the social services system can achieve greater employment outcomes for Pacific workers, support the co-creation of micro-credentials, and to support Pacific community responsiveness to the future of work, intergenerational wealth, and economic resilience. Our workplace team, our stream, Project Ikuna, has been led by the Pacific Economic Development Team at Tāmaki Makaurau Limited, and now within Auckland Council. Project Ikuna works with employers and education providers to upskill Pacific workers through in-work micro-credentials. Our whānau stream, Up Tempo, is led by the Southern Initiative, whose work program provided wraparound support services and a number of initiatives to support economic resilience and improved economic futures for Pacific families, and has developed an evidence base of reports from these initiatives to promote best practice and systems change beyond the program. And our community stream, Matangi Whau, was led by the Cause Collective, who focused on the development of community-level initiatives, prototypes, training and infrastructure to support Pacific community responses to the future of work. And just some of the key results from Arawaka over the last 4 years include the development of 14 future-ready micro-credentials based on the needs of both Pacific workers and their employers, over 6,300 micro-credentials and nearly 1,000 other trainings and qualifications delivered to support Pacific workers to transition into high-quality employment, over 200 families consisting of over 1,200 individuals receiving targeted holistic economic support to increase their resilience to labour market disruptions and improve their economic mobility, over 300 Pacific people placed into better employment or receiving a pay rise, 9 reports supporting an evidence base from Arawaka initiatives to help influence the systems change for improved economic outcomes for Pacific communities, and the development of the Good Employer Matrix, a practical tool to help employers build and progress Aotearoa New Zealand's future workforce by retaining, recruiting and progressing Pacifica and Māori, which has seen great interest from organisations across Auckland and even beyond the Bombay Hills. 2 of the reports featured today on Pacific businesses were funded through Arawaka and include collaboration from a range of agencies. But beyond the numbers, it's the real impact on Pacific people's lives through Arawaka that is the heart of the program. You'll be hearing some of those stories today, multiplied by the numbers on screen, that show Arawaka is creating a positive shift in the economic futures of Pacific people and communities. With the first phase of Arawaka coming to a close next month, the program has been transferred to the Ministry of Social Development to deliver the next phase of the program. The final form of phase 2 is yet to be confirmed, but we look forward to seeing how MSD will continue this work into the future. With your support and alongside the important work that you all do, initiatives like Arawaka can continue to contribute to building a future where Pacific people feel empowered, where they can have the tools to succeed, and where they can contribute meaningfully to Aotearoa New Zealand's economic success. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share the journey of Arawaka with you all as part of this important talent on the Pacific, Auckland Pacific economy.
That's my share. Kia ora koutou katoa and Noaia e Māori in the endangered Pacific language of Rotuma, the native tongue of my dear father, who is sitting over there. It's a privilege to share with you about Project Ikuna, a program that not just transforms workplaces, but a program that transforms people. It's a program that has shaped a positive future for the Pacific workforce and is truly life-changing. So what is Project Ikuna and why is it important? As been outlined, Project Ikuna is the workplace-focused workstream of Arawaka Auckland Pacific Skill Shift. Its purpose was clear from the outset, to equip Pacific workers with future-ready skills so they can thrive in a rapidly changing economy. Since Project Ikuna started in 2020, more than 5,200 micro-credential short courses have been achieved by 3,800 learners from more than 440 businesses and business cohorts across Tāmaki Makaurau Auckland, all during work hours. These courses range from digital literacy and financial confidence to leadership, conflict resolution, and preparing for home ownership. These courses are practical, culturally responsive, and they improve workplace achievement and home prosperity. So why does this matter for employers and government? For employers, Project Tukuna is a game changer. We know that it builds engaged, confident employees, reduces turnover, and enhances productivity. Businesses like Fletcher Reinforcing Steel, part of New Zealand's largest construction and building materials manufacturer, and Delegat, a major publicly listed New Zealand winemaker and exporter, both large employers of Pacific people in Auckland, have witnessed firsthand how financial literacy and digital skills empower people to take initiative and can grow professionally and personally. For government, we know that this program contributes to economic development goals, including creating pathways to higher paid jobs, improving living standards, and strengthening Auckland's economy. Every short course gained is a stepping stone towards economic choice and prosperity for Pacific people in Auckland. Project Tukuna is more than a training program. It's an investment in people, families, and the future of Auckland's economy. By continuing to support and expand initiatives like this, we ensure that Pacific peoples are not only participants in the future of work, they will be contributors and leaders. This is an example of collaboration that supports the growth of Auckland's Pacific economy. 4 determining factors that made Project Tukuna a success. 1, strong partnerships. Collaboration between government, education providers and industry ensured funding, employer buy-in and culturally competent delivery of appropriate courses. 2, accessibility and cultural relevance. Training is delivered in work during paid hours, removing barriers for workers who cannot afford time off. Courses are designed with Pacific values in mind, such as respect, family and community. 3, future-focused curriculum. From digital literacy to money confidence, courses target skills that matter most in a tech-driven economy. 4, measurable impact. As mentioned, more than 5,200 micro-credential short courses have been achieved by 3,800 Pacific workers from more than 440 businesses and business cohorts across Tāmaki Makaurau Auckland, all during work hours. However, behind every number is a person, a family, and a real story of change. So to bring this to life, it's a pleasure to share this short video showcasing stories of lives that have been transformed through Project Tukuna.
Confidence for me was very hard. I always struggled, I always had to get help. I really didn't see myself as a leader. I would say I was the black sheep of the family.
So before the course, I was always distracted and didn't really make that connection, physically listening to the team member and what they were actually saying.
So I used to be mute, shy, introverted, definitely would not speak up in meetings.
I was a Polynesian man, grew up in the household in Samoa, because we had no money.
The things I learned in this course, different personalities, active listening and communication.
So the light bulb moment went off for me and I was like, yeah, I do need to do this more often and frequently.
I've noticed changes in myself. I have that confidence to speak up. I can challenge what somebody else is saying, but in a way that's assertive and respectful.
So one of the biggest things I learned from this program, I said, we cut the spin. We really cut the spin.
It's been officially 2 weeks since I've been promoted to team leader, and this course helped me prepare for that role.
The leadership confidence course gave me the capability of actually buying my first home.
One of the biggest things that have happened to me since the program is that I have since been promoted. It made me want to work harder and it made my efforts worthwhile.
Oh, I'm not going to tell you how much I'll say. We had money every week.
I've gotten a pay rise. That means more money for my family, which I'm proud of. My hope for the future is to be a better leader, make more money, be happy.
So my hopes for the future is just to really dive into my role and apply my individuality to it.
After this program, when I graduated, then I said to myself, there's no way I'm going to let my children go through the same thing what I went through. And I hold on to your program.
examples, I'm honoured to introduce 4 special guests who embody the spirit of Project Te Kuna. First up, we have Jodie Bloomfield, Strategic People Capability Partner, and Rob Tusoon, Regional Service Delivery Manager from New Zealand Post. Both have seen firsthand how Project Te Kuna strengthened their workforce and organisational strategies.
Talofa lava, Wolavanaka, Malo Elele, Kia rana, and kia ora koutou. My name is Jodie Bloomfield. This is my lovely colleague, Rob Tusoon, and we're here today to talk to you about how Project Te Kuna has helped us to level up at New Zealand Post. So I might just try and bring Beba. Right. Okay, we'd like to share a little bit of background about New Zealand Post. Rob's going to kick us off with that, and then we're going to talk about the impacts of how we implemented Project Te Kuna at New Zealand Post.
Just before I start, the last time I was standing in the lectern was at a church, Māori Methodist Church, many moons ago, to read a Bible verse, and all I can say is that it didn't end well, and my mum was very disappointed with me, so this is my time to make amends. So, right, so I'm privileged to be in front of you all today. We are from Te Kuna Aotearoa, New Zealand Post. Just a little bit about business and a high sort of level. So currently we have about 7,000 employees and delivery partners across New Zealand. We were once a business that delivered mail and some parcels, and now we're sort of evolved into a parcel business that delivers some mail. Although mail is on the decline at the moment, it's still a profitable part of our business, and that's what adds value to our sort of current situation at the moment. As you will have seen in the media, I guess, or driven past one of our sites, we've invested recently $200 million in infrastructure. That's building capability within our Auckland network in terms of automation. Just some important numbers in terms of demographics in Auckland. 55% of our frontline operational staff work in Auckland. Pacifica represents 28%, and Māori 14% of the workforce in Auckland. I just need to emphasise the numbers in terms of the leadership in New Zealand Post. So 8% is Pacifica, 12% is Māori. 8% of Pacifica, largely most of the leadership roles are in our entry sort of tier levels, team leaders, charge hands, etc. There are not many in middle management, and there's absolutely next to none in senior leadership, me being one of them, and another one of my colleagues that leads our new super duper site out in our hospital. Recently, we have reset our Auckland operations. As sort of mentioned, mail's on the decline, so late last year we prepared our Auckland Mail Centre by restructuring our staff, streamlining processing at our mail centre. In terms of our parcel processing, we had 11 parcel and delivery processing sites, and recently we've just downsized that down to 4 large automation sites which are scattered from the north to the south.
So I thought I would just start us off by talking about how we got started with Project Te Kuna, our whakapapa. And it all came about because of this man here on the stage. So I started at New Zealand Post 3 years ago. I had an email come across my desk, help. We have some challenges, and at the time Rob was the site leader at Onehunga. Onehunga does no longer exist in the network. And I went out to see you in your office, and Rob talked to me about the challenges for Pacifica people in particular, and Māori at that site, and wanting to upskill them. Now I knew that there were other things going on across New Zealand with multiple suppliers coming in. It was very ad hoc at that time, and I said to Rob, can you please give me some time? So I enlisted the help of Education Unlimited. Tina Rose, you're out there somewhere in the audience, who came in at that time. I said, Tina, I need help. I've got to figure out what our problem is and what we need to do to solve it. And that included our processing officers and operational staff, as well as our frontline leaders. So that work informed how we approached foundational skills and literacy at New Zealand Post, and it changed the way that we look at it. So what we did at New Zealand Post was we looked overseas, we looked to the OECD, and we reframed and redefined what foundational skills are. Hello, Rosie. Sorry there. So we redefined it as, you have the centre, which is your reading, writing, listening, speaking, core literacy skills that are required. But more than that is this outer edge of the literacy foundational skills kind of program, and that covers things like digital and money, and that's money at home, that's money at work, that's digital skills at work, and most importantly it covers confidence, the voice, the ability to speak up, to feel confident to take on new roles. So we did that and started to look at how we would apply that at New Zealand Post. So we went back to Onehunga, and that's where Rob comes in again.
So working alongside Education Limited, we initiated the Project Kuna project, or test pilot, in Onehunga. I guess at the time it was new for the staff, it wasn't something that New Zealand Post did. So we're walking into a unknown with our people, not knowing what the end result would be. A lot of, I guess, people were not interested from the start. But as we sort of went through the program, a lot of their sort of confidence, their charisma, their, I guess the natural knack in terms of collaborating with each other, just talking, being open and learning amongst their fellow peers. As you can see yourself on the slide, there's a lot of comments from our people that sort of appreciate the program or promoted the program to the wider network. And I guess from that point on, we gave them the privilege of naming the program, which we use in New Zealand Post currently called Level Up.
So, oops. There you go. Oh, sorry, I'm backwards. Okay. So basically, by using Project Kuna, that's good 3 years ago now, we were able to figure out what we needed to do for the wider New Zealand Post people, both in our Level Up Essentials program, which is literacy, where we went to the Tertiary Education Commission and got funding, but we used the concepts that we got from Project Kuna to be able to deliver this nationwide across New Zealand. And then over the last year, we recircled back because we recognise 8% is not good enough at New Zealand Post for Pacifica people to be in leadership roles when we have 28% on the floor. Not good enough. So we went back to Project Kuna and we formed this leadership development program where we were addressing things like pathways into leadership and confidence to be able to navigate changes in the network, and that's the next thing that Rob's going to talk about, how what's happened in our network, and then we'll talk about how Project Kuna's helped that.
So in the last 18 to 24 months, we restructured the Auckland network. As I mentioned from the start, we had a number of sites, 11 sites, which we downsized to 4. 3 of those being parcel and delivery, and the 4th one being our major processing site in Wiri. During the transformation, it sort of took a massive toll on our people, significant impacts in terms of travel. Obviously, we had sites dotted around close to where they sort of lived, etc., close to where the kids went to school, and we sort of shrunk it down to 4. So obviously there's a lot of concerns in terms of travel, but also walking into a new environment where they're facing automation day to day. What this sort of meant for the people, it opened up a lot of opportunities as well. So during that process, we created a number of new leadership roles, which people successfully transferred over to. Just sort of driving the change. one of those sites, which I guess we'll probably touch on very soon, in Auckland South. We're waiting through level up with them and sort of touched on the points on leadership confidence, communication, conflict resolution, which we'll have a case study we'll talk about shortly, where one of those leaders took those skills and took it over and referred to a new site and is thriving at the moment. So.
That transformation is really hard on our people. I mean, we can't, thank you. It can't be said enough that that is a really stressful time when you're going from 11 sites down to 4 and you're having to move and work with new people. You're going into automation. You've never worked with automation before. That requires digital capability. It requires leadership, and it requires conflict resolution for sure, because there's going to be conflict at new sites. So one of our sites, Auckland South Depot, these are the lovely people from Auckland South Depot here, have gone through level up programs, level up through Project Kuna. I can say with great pride that all of those people have transferred into new sites. We have not lost any of our staff, and many of them have transferred into leadership roles. And I really wanted to just highlight Whanga, who's up on the left-hand side, and she's a case study up here today. Today is Black Friday, so Whanga could not be here. It is the absolute worst day in New Zealand Post to take anybody off the floor. But please go home, I would say to you, please go home, shop online and pick New Zealand Post as your preferred logistics provider in New Zealand. So look, Whanga started at Auckland South Depot. She was on a temp role. She became a charge hand, and then she transferred over to Auckland Central Depot and is now a support lead at Auckland Central Depot. I just want to read a couple of little key things that Whanga said, and she said things like, when we interviewed her about this, she said, every day is a challenge, but every day is also a learning experience. I know I can do as much as anyone else. And I must say that at Women in New Zealand Post, there are more women than men in frontline operations, so it's very important to see our wahine come through. She said, she went through conflict resolution. She talked about how, in the past she might have reacted differently to conflict. She said, now I stay calm and respond positively no matter the situation. You can always sort things out positively. It helps me deal with my children better as well. She said, I used to hide behind my team leader while they did the talking. I'm now confident to get out and speak and run the DSUs. And she is running a decent sized team, by the way, now. So not a little tiny team in South Depot, a big chunky team at ACD. I think one of the things that I love most about her case study though was she said her mum was visiting from Samoa when she received her micro credentials, and she took them home, and her mum was just overjoyed. She said that was the best gift I could give my mum. Her goal is to become a floor manager, and she said she wants to show her children that if mum can do it, they can do it too. So, great story, and there are so many Whangas at New Zealand Post who have gone through Project Kuna, and Rob could probably talk a bit more about that.
Sorry. So, with Project Kuna and Education Unlimited, so the supporting program, we've seen the difference in our leaders. We've done a number of our sites, and I guess the comments there, which are genuine from our leaders, which speaks for itself. But I guess in terms of Pacifica, we are humble, we are quiet, but I know when it comes to parade, we're quite loud, so we're trying to call out that inner voice from them and bring them to the workplace, be proud of who they are, which we are seeing at the moment. So our challenge, I guess, to us all in this room is how do we sort of get that out? How do we make the most of it? How do we break that ceiling? Especially, I guess, with New Zealand Post being a state-owned enterprise, how do we crack that? How do we get, I guess, up into senior leadership? Because I guess for our people, it's hard to aspire when you don't see a brown face in senior leadership, which is true. A lot of our leadership structure, I guess, is pretty much. But how do we get more brown faces on the decision table? and that's sort of my goal to aspire to make sure we get to that level in the next year or so.
So finally, where to with Project Kuna? So this is just a starting point for us. You'll see those 2 green arrows coming down. If we want to shift that 8% stat, and if we want to bring about productivity into Auckland and across New Zealand in general, then we need to invest in these types of programs. New Zealand Post cannot do this on our own. I'm really pleased to hear that it's going to be picked up by MSD, and hope that Project Kuna will go further out and across New Zealand, because we have Pasifika and Māori in every part of New Zealand now, so it's important to see this program go wider. So, thank you so much for the opportunity, to everyone for the opportunity to come and talk about this. If you would like to know more about what we've been doing at New Zealand Post, please reach out to us. We are always happy to talk about it. We will not stop talking about it. So, yes, and thank you to Sarah for the invite. Thank you.
You're all going to get sending letters again and buying stuff in your Black Friday sales to support New Zealand Post. Thank you, Jodie and Rob, that just really was beautiful, thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Paia Otumuli, a Project Kuna facilitator from one of our education providers, the Learning Wave, who will share what this program has meant for his life and future.
Sorry guys. Alright. Malelei, tawhanawa, kia ora, good morning to you all. First off, I just want to thank Sarah, Candy and Neil for reaching out and including me the opportunity to share my story with you all today. I'm genuinely humbled to be here. My name is Paia Otumuli and I currently work as a learning and development facilitator for one of the best providers in Aotearoa, Learning Wave. I'm a New Zealand born and raised in the beautiful, chaotic, heartful suburb of Māngere East. A place that taught me humility, resilience, and how to laugh even when life gets a bit tough. Now, if you told me a year ago that I'd be talking at an Auckland Council breakfast, I would have probably checked if you had the right pie. Because a year ago, I wasn't on stages, I wasn't holding microphones, I wasn't doing speeches in front of this many people. I was actually running toolbox meetings at the AFCO Tannery in Wiri. Steel caps, overalls, hivers, and that famous tannery smell that sort of follows you home. So for me, standing here today is a pretty big upgrade. So this morning I want to share a journey with you. A journey from the tannery to facilitation, from being a learner to becoming a facilitator, and what I've seen from both sides of the road. In 2023, our very first Project Kuna session started at AFCO Wiri, where I was working as a production supervisor. We walked in and met Sarah Morton and Teresa Brown for the first time. People, they were hesitant, they were shy, and I'm not talking normal shy, probably Olympic level shy. I sat with them before the session and had a little paranoia, genuinely curious about what their fears were, and what came out was real. Fear of being asked to speak, nervous about learning, low confidence, tough school experience, feeling not smart enough, and feeling like learning spaces were built for them. These weren't small barriers, these were lifelong shadows. Then Sarah and T stepped up, and the entire energy in the room shifted. Before touching a slide or handing out a workbook, they set the tone. They didn't start with rules, and they didn't start with pressure, they started with warmth. A smile, a joke, and a genuine, heartfelt, how are you today? You could see people break up, shoulders lowering, nerves softening, those first quiet laughs echoing around the room. They created something that Pacifica and Māori works really get, a safe learning space, where it's okay to try, it's okay to speak, it's okay to not know the answer. Because of that environment, the quietest workers who never spoke in toolbox meetings slowly opened up. Silent voices became shared voices. People asked questions, solved problems together, laughed and connected. It wasn't just good teaching. It was cultural, it was healing, and it was mana enhancing. It laid the foundation for everything that came after. Now, the learning didn't end in the classroom. Out on the floor, the changes were unmistakable. People spoke up earlier. They raised issues instead of hiding them. They offered solutions, they asked questions, and they communicated clearly. Quiet ones weren't quiet anymore, the hesitant ones weren't holding back. For the first time in a long time, our team was operating from confidence instead of fear. The culture didn't shift because of new systems or new processes. It shifted because people finally believed my voice has value. As I sat through each session, something started happening to me. I was learning things about myself. As a leader, a worker, and at the time, a new dad. Then came a leadership module on career paths. I sat next to T, or Teresa Brown, and I asked her the next random question. Do you think I could do what you do? She looked at me real serious, and she said, no. No, I'm joking. She smiled and she said, dude, absolutely. Here's your pathway. She pointed me towards Auckland Poly, and so like Dorothy, I followed the yellow road. Worked during the day, husband and dad in the evenings, studied at night. Then came the moment where I had to really trust my gut. I handed in my notice, no job lined up, just pure faith. Constantly told myself, if I get a job, yeah, really. If not, yeah, okay. I reached out to T and the learning work just happened to be looking for internal facilitators. I applied, got a call for an interview. When I asked about the interview process, I found out it was in stages. Nerve-wracking considering other interviews I've been part of. Luckily during Project Ikuna, I had learned interview skills, real ones. I walked in confident, clear, and ready, gave it my all. A few weeks later, I got the call, you got the job. And just like that, from the AFCO tannery to the learning wave, from steel caps to casual footwear, from production supervisor to facilitator. Fast forward to this year, and now I'm the one facilitating Project Ikuna. Standing in the front of the room, looking into the faces of people who remind me of my uncles, my neighbors, my former co-workers, see things differently. You see the fear, you see the hope, you see the spark when something finally clicks. And the stories I've witnessed, the moments of courage, vulnerability, and transformation, they stay with you. They remind you why this co-papa matters and why this work is worth doing. Let me share a few of these stories with you because they capture the true heart of Project Ikuna. One of my intro to leadership sessions, Elena shared she had finally had a courageous conversation with a team member. Conversation she had been avoiding for months, not because she didn't care, but because she didn't want conflict, didn't want to upset anyone, and didn't want to get it wrong. She used the framework from one of our sessions. She planned it, she breathed through the nerves, and she walked into that conversation shaking on the inside, but she still went in. She said she was nervous, she was uncomfortable, but she pushed through anyway. Afterwards, she told me, it wasn't as scary as I thought, and I feel a bit lighter. That's leadership, not the title and not the authority, just courage wrapped in compassion and the willingness to do something hard with a good heart. And in the assertiveness and confidence module, there was a learner in his late 40s who came back in session 2 with this quiet, humble smile on his face. He pulled me aside and he said, I tried what we learned with my kids. No yelling, just calm, assertive communication. He said it felt weird at first because for many of us specifically, yelling isn't just communication, sometimes it's a tradition. But he made a choice to try something different. And then he tells me, I just started doing things without me telling him. Same dad, same kids, but a completely different energy in the home. Assertiveness didn't just make him stronger communicator, it softened his home, shifted his parenting, and made him a better father. Another learner in his 50s used conflict resolution tools after an issue with a supervisor. If context owed him, would have done what many of us do. Stay silent, swallow, go home angry, carry for days, weeks, and even months. This time was different. He sat down, took a breath, and wrote a respectful, clear email, explaining what happened, how it made him feel, and asking to resolve. Plant manager showed me that email and said, I've never seen him communicate like this before. That's conflict resolution. Not fighting, not shouting, but advocating for yourself, for clarity and dignity. That's voice and that's mana. And then there was my shy Samoan, also quiet, humble, and strong because of his English. During breaks, we'd sit together going through the word book slowly, line by line, word by word, just building confidence, one sentence at a time. He never complained, he never made excuses, he just kept trying. At our final session, he stayed back, walked up to me and gave me this big heartfelt hug. He said, thank you, my also. My English is still not the best, but I'm more confident speaking. Thank you for being patient. That moment stays with me. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs aren't loud, sometimes they whisper, sometimes they felt in the heart. Project Ikuna doesn't just transform workers, it transforms service. When a parent gains confidence, kids feel it, partners feel it, communication changes, relationships soften, patterns break, and new ones fall. For Pacific and Māori, education is not individual, it is collective, it's generational. And it belongs to the village. When you lift one person, you lift the whole farm. That's why we say, the future of one person is sustained by the many. Project Ikuna lifted me as a learner, I lifted my team as a supervisor, and now as a facilitator, I get to lift others. That's the ripple effect we're investing in. To Auckland Council and all the partners, thank you for believing in our people. If a shy Tongan supervisor from the tannery can go from the factory floor to facilitation, imagine how many more stories like mine are out there, just waiting for someone to believe in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paya. That really was beautiful. And to hear your testimony today, and even from New Zealand Post, I mean, you really have to take a minute to just think, gee, that is an impressive program. I know everyone is. To wrap up this segment on Project Ikuna, it's my pleasure to now introduce Robin Henderson, General Manager of the Economic Growth Branch at MB, who will share why initiatives like Project Ikuna and working together is critical for New Zealand's economic development and supporting the growth of Auckland and its Pacific economy. Thank you.
Talafalafa, Pulavanaka, Malo, Resorta, Tēnā koutou katoa, and warm Pacific greetings to you all. Thank you, Sarah. It's really wonderful to be here today. So thank you for inviting me to talk a little bit about MB's role around economic development nationally, but also importantly how we work with partners to really deliver meaningful outcomes. To go against the very positive feeling in the room, I'm going to take us back to Wellington just for a minute. Spend 30 seconds just talking about MB, so the organisation that Ben and I are from. So our overall purpose, our vision, if you like, is to grow New Zealand for all, and I think that's a really important and empowering vision that we're working towards. We are a large part of the government system. We have a number of different ministers. I think last count we report to about 20 different ministers across a huge array of portfolios. And it is really important that across all of those portfolios we really have a really active way of ensuring that we're bringing the perspectives of all the communities within New Zealand so that we can ensure that they are delivering against the needs and both the opportunities as well. So 17 regulatory systems, from health and safety to financial markets to even space, regulating our space launch sector, and nearly 6,000 employees. Some based in Auckland, a large part in Wellington, but throughout the country as well. And the bit that Ben and I work in is around economic growth. It is that vision, that purpose around growing, delivering prosperous and adaptable people, sectors and regions. And the only way that we're going to do that effectively is if we work constructively and openly with local government, with businesses, with communities, and making sure that we're all harnessing the different strengths and perspectives and levers that we all have. Going for growth is this government's economic strategy, if you like, the economic plan. It was launched February this year by Nicola Willis as the Minister for Economic Growth. It is sort of the glue in the government system that is trying to bring different portfolios and different agencies together to think about how do we really lift New Zealand's overall productivity, how do we grow our exports, how do we create more high value jobs throughout the country, and how do we really back the industries that we want to see in New Zealand's future. So we've just as recently as yesterday, released an update to one of the pillars, which I'll talk about in a minute. So we're proud of that work in terms of the foundation that it's enabled this year, but I think next year, 2026, is a real opportunity to think about what's next. What are the next big ideas that we can put up to ministers and see if they can take those forward to really continue on the momentum from what's being delivered. I'll just really quickly highlight the 5 pillars across here. I think they touch on some of the concepts that have been raised in the great speakers that we've had already this morning, and in particular the developing talent one at the start. So this is very much around skills, building high value jobs. How do we maximise the potential of all New Zealanders so that they are working in really productive and worthwhile and satisfying jobs. So there's a number of different government programs working into that, from things like replacing the NCEA to looking at immigration settings and other changes that are happening at the schools, within schools. Competitive business settings, this is very much around how do we make it easier for businesses to do what they want to do. So there's been a whole series of input on the red tape tip line that Minister Seymour has been running. He's really keen to make sure that all of the grit in the system, the bugbears, there's nothing too small. If it's creating issues, he wants to know about it and to see it resolved. Promoting global trade and investment, so how do we build our export capabilities, how do we support our industries. There's a range of investment attraction activity there, the creation of Invest New Zealand this year, and also the Active Investor Plus visa, and ministers have been active overseas to really try and promote New Zealand as much as they can. Innovation, technology and science, this is about supporting our emerging industries, the industries of the future. How do we build our understanding of the potential of technologies? How do we ensure that we have strong industries that are using tech, so things like agri-tech, financial tech, health tech, working closely with the science system as they are reformed and have a stronger focus on that in the years ahead. And also things like our launching the first AI strategy. And then finally, the 5th one, infrastructure. So you will all be aware of this government's focus on building a lot of infrastructure, including here in Auckland, and I think a key thing there is making sure that there's more long-term certainty over what that program looks like, and that it is sustained in the investment in the years ahead. The key message, though, that I wanted to take this opportunity to convey is that all of our work that we do back in the ministry, it can only really succeed if we're able to learn from local government and industry and other communities to really make sure that when we do go and implement something, that it is built off the knowledge and understanding of people in the communities and on the ground. So I think our work around Alavaka is a really good example of that. So it was built with 3 core partners. So there was us and MB, the Southern Initiative, and then Auckland Unlimited. And I think bringing the different strengths that we had with MB and its policy leadership and understanding of how the central government system works, the Southern Initiative bringing that community innovation lens, and then Auckland Unlimited with its connections between economic development and industry in the region. And I think as we worked that through, making sure that we had some shared principles for how we wanted that partnership to work. So there was courage, reciprocity, authenticity and respect, and really making sure that that was filtered through in all of the activity and could really be demonstrated. So I think both having a really clear view of that as a group and then having actions that really showed how we would demonstrate that as the project was implemented. Some of those we've got up on the screen. And I think it just is so crucial in terms of really trying to collapse that gap between policy and community reality. So I think it was Jodie who was talking about, looking at OECD examples or looking internationally. That's a typical go-to for us in terms of looking at how we design different programs. But you can't take a program that's been designed in another part of the world and just think it's going to work here. You do actually need to be able to bring in the perspectives of people who are in communities or in the businesses to make sure that we design it specifically for the needs of people here in Aotearoa. So I think we are hugely proud of the work that we have been able to play a role in Arawaka. I personally can't take credit for it. Ben has been very closely involved in it. I've had the privilege of sitting alongside colleagues in MB who have been involved right from the very beginning a number of years ago, and it is just hugely humbling to come here today and hear the stories of how it has really impacted people's lives and futures and families. So really want to make sure we support the Ministry for Social Development as it transitions over in the next few months. And just thank you again for having me here. It's been really great. So, kia ora. Hope it's a good rest of the morning.
So another round of applause for Ben, Sarah, Jodie, Rob, and the question around how do we support Pacific people to prosper, thrive, participate in and contribute to Auckland or New Zealand's economy authentically, scale up ikuna. I heard here at the end of Robin's contribution that this is going from MB over to MSD. Well, if there's any folks or colleagues from MSD, this stuff works, right? And the analogy that I want to lay down as a wheel today to all of us as leaders, or to all of us that have a part to play in the economic prosperity of Pacifica people, I invite you to think about the making of a pā harakeke. There's new shoots, there's old shoots. We've got to know, we've got to learn when it's time to let go of the old shoots. I don't know about you, but when they played the video of ikuna, you can't help but be moved. And so the wheel, the challenge to you is, it's incumbent and we're always going to be at the mercy of government purse strings, right? So in a day and age of where you have to do more with less, where you have to prioritise, where a lot of us are still scattergunning, like what we've done for the last 30 years, think Project Ikuna. Robin, you mentioned that you have ongoing meetings with the Minister. Tāmaki Makaurau fund a program, okay? That's what we want, eh? That's the message to the Minister. Tāmaki Makaurau, this is the silver bullet fund Project Ikuna model. Okay. It's almost time for a cup of tea and some kai, but first I'd like to extend a big thank you to Vasemata Tāvola. Vasemata is the director of Vunilangi Vo, a studio, showroom and consultancy that is based in South Auckland, and creator of the beautiful salu that's been given and gifted to our speakers here today. Vasemata is a Fijian artist, curator, and the founding curator of the much-loved Fresh Gallery in Ōtara. Pinaka Wakalevu Vasemata for sharing your inspiring creativity with us. Speaking of inspiration, the providers that are at the back of our room today, the education providers that provided the credentials for Project Ikuna, please check them out. The easels on display around the room showcase the talent, the successful people that have participated in Project Ikuna. You might be thinking, who's doing karakia mo te kai? Well, it's traditional values, contemporary delivery, alternate grade at the beginning and the kitchen for all the kai. So, enjoy your break. We'll see you at 9:40.
Thank you. I'll just say my background, think Haya said he came from Manga East, which he was no problem to Hawk, but I played for Manukau Bad Boys, so influence here and always topical. Anyway, this is slightly awkward in that we're talking about something that you haven't yet read. I've read the report and I find it fascinating. It's also quite awkward in that we had such inspiring stories earlier on that we're going to have to try and, I think, extract the inspiration from the data scientists and economists on the panel here. About a year ago, I think I was on the panel talking with Sam, I think I saw there, and Mary, talking about the Pacific workforce, so, and the skills and employment opportunities that are probably going undercapitalised on. This report, which is very, very data rich, quite technical, content heavy, looks more at the businesses and the employers in the Pacific economy. That element of it, which I think is a key driver, often gets overlooked. So what we'll do here is be a little bit more conversational, given the audience, and you'll get to read the report later. I'm sure Dion and Scott, possibly Bernie, who's moved jobs since then, will be able to answer any questions subsequently, but I thought I'd just open by getting our panel to talk through, I guess, what their interests were, what their inspirations and motivations for the work were or are, and what that meant for how they approach the preparation of a report of this kind. So over to you guys, who wants to go first?
Yeah. So the thing that, as Preston says, this is a data-heavy report. It's full of numbers. In many ways, it's a poor cousin to some of the stories we heard this morning from Project Ikona. And Scott and I were talking before, and you only need to hear one or two stories like what Pai presented to us to say, hey, I think programs like that are worthwhile delivering. There's value in all sorts of things in the Pacific economy, but there are also stories that some people are going to be easy to say, well, that's just one example, but on average, it's not like that, that's not true. And so having something where we can go and we can look at this broad data set and say, across all of the data in the country, we can do some fancy counting, we can count all of the Pacific-owned businesses, we can find all of the businesses that are significant employers of Pacific peoples and quantify that. It presents, sure, it's maybe less exciting, less inspiring as a story, but for the decision makers or the people who are going to be convinced by numbers as opposed to by the narrative, it lays down this a truth that's hard to step past. And we've seen that these types of reports can have impact already because previous examples like Tāmaki Makaurau, so that was a report series quantifying the Māori economy. And we watch that now influencing policy and decisions being made, and people saying, hey, actually, in this sector, in this place, there's a lot of this going on, or there's not much here, or we see this level of impact, or that level of opportunity. So it was a chance to be the first report that sets it out. What's the base for what do the numbers really say about the Pacific economy? Where are opportunities? Where are gaps? Strengths, weaknesses, that sort of thing.
Excellent intro, thanks. So Topline and Hello Ola Kita, it's Southern Island Pidgin language work. My involvement's a bit mixed, so I'm here representing the Ministry for Pacific Peoples, my current capacity as Deputy Secretary. But when this project was being commissioned, I was the Chief Executive of Nicholson Consulting, which is an organisation that prepared the document, and we've got Sarah here, who's the current Chief Executive as well, so if you have any questions, ask her now. But what inspired us when we were having these initial conversations with Sarah, who will have been at Tāmaki Auckland Council, is that in essence this is being commissioned by people who are actually going to use this information to drive prosperity in terms of economic growth in the Auckland region. So it's not just this academic piece of research that's going to sit there and maybe looked at, but we have Auckland Council as well as MB, who are key users and drivers and that's really inspiring. I should also note that part of the vision of Nicholson Consulting is a more equitable Aotearoa, so a lot of our work focused on improving equity for New Zealand.
Morena tātou, Marolene, Tōwharawa. So my motivation, I have some very motivated team members like Sarah, also Candy, Dion have been the heart of Project Kuna, and Sarah running our Tūlewa Pacific work program for many years. And so the motivation really came from them, and when Sarah came to me and said we have an opportunity to do, so Dion mentioned the Te Matapairo work, which has been groundbreaking in terms of understanding and quantifying the Māori business landscape. When Sarah came and said we have an opportunity to do that for Pacific, I was really keen to be involved and supported in terms of my role in the Economic Development Office at Auckland Council. And another motivation, I guess more broadly, if you consider Auckland, the statistics are often cited that 17% of our population are Pacific peoples, but if you look younger than that, so under 15, it's 25%. If you go even younger, so if you look at birth data from last year, 28% of children born in Auckland last year have Pacific ethnicity. So that's our future. Future workforce, the future of our entrepreneurs, the future of our businesses, and we know that entrepreneurship and business ownership is really important for intergenerational wealth.
Thanks, guys. These are not data scientists, data-driven folks, but what I want to ask now is what your sort of almost personal highlight or finding was of the report, and did you find anything that surprised you or stood out so that we can get a flavour for what's in the report here now and why that's actually meaningful. And I would say that often gets trotted out as you measure what matters, and if the implication is if you don't measure it, it doesn't matter. So I think just keeping that in mind when we talk through this thing is that it does look like a highly technical, almost piece of art you put on the wall and walk past, but it is actually informing and hopefully does inform the future direction for investment, for policy, for government actions and those types of things. So, sorry, I was supposed to talk less and ask more, but what really stood out for you in terms of the findings of the report? I've got a couple which I think we can mention if you don't. So. You guys?
Yeah, so one of the things, this was sort of one of the high level things, is we start the report with just recounting a lot of businesses and we end up in a bunch of nitty gritty things at the end where sort of, I don't know, maybe the data raises more questions than what it answers, but one of the high level things was, okay, what are the fraction of businesses in the Pacific economy or Pacific businesses in the economy, and both nationally and in Auckland, and you look at the fractions and you look at the fractions of people and you say, that looks a little bit low, it looks lower than what you'd expect given the population, and then you look at how's that fraction growing, how's it been increasing over time, and it's growing faster. So the rate that we're getting new Pacific businesses is faster than the rate that we're adding other businesses to the economy. So there's this mixed thing of Pacific businesses in Auckland in particular haven't reached that potential yet of being as representative as you might expect, but they're getting there. There's definitely that faster rate of growth. They're becoming an increasing fraction every year, and so yes, part of that's a growing population, but it's also just more Pacific entrepreneurship growing. So it's that mix of there is room to grow, there's potential to grow, and that growth is actually taking place.
Maybe feeding on from that, so the growth is, in terms of numbers, is 1.3 to 1.9, so it's a 61% increase in Pacific businesses, which is really positive. But when you look at it in terms of the population size, especially in Auckland, we've got around 30% of Pacific who are and the age range we're looking at is the 30 to 64 years, because that's when you're more likely to start owning a business. So you've got 13% of Aucklanders within that age range, but they only comprise 3% of businesses. So there is, whilst it's positive that we're growing our businesses, there's a huge capacity to increase that, because ideally we want it to marry up to what the population kind of looks like, especially here in Auckland. And one of the things I found potentially really interesting is when you consider it, so we've talked about Pacifica being a younger, more youthful population, and which it has many implications in the future. But overlay that with the demographics regarding first generation and New Zealand born. So what we know currently is that 2/3 of Pacifica are born in New Zealand compared to 1/3 who are first generation. You break that down further and you look at the youth layer and the on top of that. So of those 2/3 who are born in New Zealand, a huge proportion, so around 73%, are under the age of 30. Then the flip side of that is that those who are first generation, around 54% were of that age bracket of 30 to 64. So you've got, in that age bracket of the business owners, the first generation are older, but we've got this upcoming generation of New Zealand-born Pacifica who hadn't quite reached that business ownership age. So that makes me think, okay, and reflecting on my own personal situation when my father migrated to Samoa, you're navigating as a first-generation New Zealander, you're navigating so many difficulties in terms of your own personal self, understanding a new system, getting yourself sorted, getting a new job, let alone the issues you would have in terms of business. Starting a new business requires not just taking risks, but getting the relevant equity. It requires navigating the red tape, understanding the tax system and all that type of jazz. So it makes sense that the first generation New Zealanders, especially in Auckland, there's 54% in the age bracket, but we're only covering around 36% of businesses. What this tells us is, there might be more support to be provided there, but in the future, the upcoming businesses will be both more likely to be New Zealand born, and also that means we can really invest in the education in terms of how do we support youth who are born in New Zealand to become more entrepreneurial, to take some of these risks, which I found an interesting angle. There's other angles as well, but I could actually talk ages, so I'm going to pass on the feedback.
I think that also suggests, because we looked at which industries had higher or lower representation of Pacific business owners, or higher or lower presence of significant employers of Pacific people. And that looks a particular way at the moment, and there's a bunch of things you'll know already: construction high, some other sectors low, and we don't necessarily expect that to stay true in future, because the types of businesses that Pacific peoples are going to start are going to look different for New Zealand-born Pacific people versus first-generation migrants. Different skills, different experiences, different exposure to friends and family and businesses you grew up around. So Pacific businesses of the future won't necessarily follow that same pattern of who's in which industries that they do now. What it will look like, don't know. There's kind of some hints in the report, maybe. I don't know, we'll talk about that later, but yeah, it's got a chance.
Yeah, certainly the growth rates, I think if you consider that in Auckland, for example, number of Pacific businesses have grown 66% in the last decade, and the population's grown at 30%, so that's very encouraging. At the same time, like Bernadette said, there are some challenges in terms of lower self-employment rates amongst Pacific people, and business survival rates are lower too. I think it's important to frame that as an opportunity and look at that as through a positive lens, a bit like the Pay Bureau last year for the survey in Preston, going away from that deficit lens. Why are the rates so low? What are the problems? Looking at it as more of an opportunity, especially considering the demographic trends I mentioned before. The other interesting thing that stood out to me, or even surprising, when we talk about Pacific peoples in Auckland, we often talk about South Auckland. Around 50% of the Pacific populations in the three southern local boards of Māngere, Otahu, Ōtara Toitoi, and Makarewa. There's a lot of Pacific businesses in those local boards as well, but the most Pacific businesses of any local board is actually Henderson, Massey, so West Auckland. And I noticed there, I live out west as well, so I think this South Auckland is really important, obviously, when you're talking about the Pacific economy, but there's a lot of Pacific businesses elsewhere. West Auckland is one of those places. So I thought that was a really interesting finding and something for us to consider as well.
Sorry, I've just got one other And I'm going to make sure I read the stat correctly, but in the report there's a lot of definitions because it's a data report, so I'll try and explain this a little bit simply. There are kind of two types of classifications of businesses. There is one which is significant employers of Pacific people, which in essence is more looking at the staff, like how many of them are Pacifica, and if they're 50% or greater, they're a significant employer. The other side is Pacific business owners, which is just, as it sounds like, more looking at, rather than the makeup of the composition of staff, it's just how many businesses were owned by Pacifica. And one stat that I found amazing, which was, so significant employers of Pacific people were 13 times more likely to be Pacific owned. And I'll say that again. So significant employers of Pacific people are 13 times more likely to be Pacific owned. And that in itself just justifies the theory of change, of why we should start, us Pacifica should start owning businesses, because we talk about the benefits regarding self-determination or self-sufficiency. We talk about embedding our own values in businesses. But also, one of the key reasons why we believe Pacifica enter into owning businesses is to support their communities, to redistribute profit to our communities and our families. And what better way to support your communities than employing your community? And you overlay that with the fact that we've got a high disparity in our unemployment rate in terms of total population. I think it's in around 5%. If you break that down from a Pacific angle, it's sitting around 12%. So that encouragement towards business ownership is a pathway towards supporting that unemployment rate. And that's just the data lens. So yesterday I was at another funnel and I shared that stat with one of the largest service providers here in Auckland. And he just took me and was like, yeah, that absolutely makes sense I know this is anecdotal, but part of their program is putting it as a pathway into employment, and part of their choices as to who to select to be the employers is a bit different when you look at it paper versus the choices that they've made. So like on paper, a business that has successful, a really good HR team, really good PD program, it looks slick, it's got good CRM, they're not necessarily the best employers for Pacifica. What they found is that Pacific-owned businesses, they just got that difference in terms of understanding the culture, having the patience, not creating that divide, and that was the path that they have also chosen. I know it's anecdotal, but it's another, and we've heard around Project Ikuna. All those type of examples support kind of that fact.
I think that ties in as well, and this is not in the report, but it's going to tie with things like that Level Up program that we heard about earlier. So I'm heaven forbid that all these amazing Pacific leaders that New Zealand Post are training should leave New Zealand Post and go out and start their own businesses in other places. But you can imagine some uplift in a large organisation that leads to leadership opportunities, those leadership opportunities spilling over and turning into Pacific entrepreneurship, and then people having the skills to be significant employers of Pacific peoples in those businesses that they set up.
Thanks. Often people sort of say they'll let the data speak for itself. But you touched on it then. I wonder if you could expand on what the Pacific voice was, what the specific characteristics of either how a business operates or the composition of business. I know it's a data report rather than a sort of a social report, but what's the Pacific flavour in there, and how much is it related to being in Tāmaki as opposed to elsewhere? Difficult question, but I think it's an important one.
Almost the report raised more questions than it gave answers there, and it gave a lot of suggestions. There was a section of it where we looked at average salaries or average income of people and per job. And we looked at that, and it was clear that the subtext, basically, you saw some low numbers, and the subtext was these are people who are working multiple jobs or who are working part-time in there. So there's things like that. There's There's interesting little things, and I don't know if Scott's going to touch on this, but how some of the Pacific businesses and significant employers are distributed around Auckland. So Scott mentioned Howick having a larger fraction of Pacific-owned businesses, but then when we look at significant employers, some of the territorial areas or territorial local boards that had a larger number of significant Pacific employers than you expect were Howick and Waitemata. Waitemata, you might expect, is just there's a lot of businesses there. What's going on with Howick? Why have they got a larger fraction of significant Pacific employers?
Howick as well, but Henderson was the most, but with significant employers, Howick.
Yes, Howick were the employers, Henderson
driven by,
yeah.
driven by East Tāmaki, to a large extent.
Yeah. Things like that. There's little stories around particular industries. There's the ones you know about, like construction, but then there's other little ones where you see overrepresentation of Pacific-owned businesses and significant employers, like arts and recreation services. And there's a little bit of stuff in information technology and media. And you go, hey, what's going on in Henderson? There's a bunch of film studios out there. And also, if that's where you're seeing arts and media, is there a story there to unpack? The report doesn't answer that, but it suggests, hey, next, what might you want to go looking for? Is there sector-specific narratives that need to be basically looked at a little bit closer to dig in further on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, just generally, Pacific businesses are more likely to employ other Pacific people and then create a culture which is more in line with how they're comfortable working. So that's really important, I think, in terms of growing more Pacific businesses, as I spoke to before. Entrepreneurship drives a lot of wealth and intergenerational wealth, and then giving more Pacific Rangatahi the opportunity, or even older people the opportunity to own businesses and benefit their community and see that wealth generate itself through the community is really important.
I'm conscious of time, but if I can quickly, so we've touched on the uses of the report. Why is it useful? Where do we go from here? That's, I guess, the next question. What conditions are needed to sort of maximise or capitalise on the platform that's been laid here? Who needs to be involved and what are the next steps in a nutshell? Because we've got to sort of wrap up soon, I think.
I think there's probably some of that digging in. So if you want to bring about change, it is going to be look at specific sectors, look at specific locations. I think Auckland Council's in a good place to do that. There's the skills and there's already the work going on that shows that they do make use of that. So that would be the big one for me. It's the dive deeper, keep measuring and then dive deeper and where there's little spots of insight and interest.
Probably from a policy lens as well. There is definitely snippets of really insightful components. For example, and this is more a disappointing fact, only a third of owned businesses were owned by women compared to the national stats of 50%. So how do we actually embrace that and try and incentivise the behaviour that we want to see? So that would be liaising, talking to our colleagues in, say, MB as well as the Ministry for Education, so there's heaps of opportunities around. So what we found was that the top layer of which people are graduating or getting some form of education before going and owning a business is primarily just at their diploma or NCA level, and it's only 20% are getting a graduate degree or above compared to 40% of the total population, which just begs the question of if we are going to see a shift into the industries and pushing more of our youth into different types of industries that are going to survive in the future, the key focus should be into upskilling, education, and we've got a bit of time, so we can actually focus on that.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, Tāmaki Makaurau Auckland, the Māori version of this, has had multiple iterations, and the fact that we now have a Pacific version of that to set a baseline and to work from. And obviously sometimes these reports create more questions than answers. It's not necessarily meant to be prescriptive or give answers. but it creates discussion, it informs discussion through data, and I think that's really important. So it's something to build on the fact that we now have a Pacific business report like this, which is so rich in data that we can use in policy discussions, use to inform our economic development work and many other things. This is the main takeaway for me.
Cool. Just in wrapping up, if we could get just one thought or comment or reflection as a parting gift to the audience, pretending you're in a lift or something like that, talking about the report, you're only going 3 floors, so if you could just, anything like that, if you don't have it, that's fine. It's just the way to end.
I'll just reiterate what I said, and my earlier point in my introduction, I think some people know the stats, some people don't. Data demographic trends are really important. We have the Pacific people are the future of Auckland's economy, future of New Zealand's economy. There's 28% of children born in Auckland last year have Pacific ethnicity, so that's, yeah, we're a Pacific city, we're a Pacific nation, so I think that's really important.
That was my point as well. But maybe a different angle of it is that we haven't actually seen what, as more and more youth come into that 30 to 64, they actually maybe kick us already. There's a little bit of having enough time to observe what's happening, but also making sure that we are investing in that component as well, because we already have that capture point, we can help them.
Very similarly, the Pacific economy is growing. It is going to be a bigger part of Auckland's economy and the national economy in the future. Ignore it at your peril. What's it going to look like in the future? We don't know. It probably won't look the same as what it looks like now. So, yeah.
Other issues. I had a session yesterday with the CEO of Treasury and DPNC, and they reiterated that point. New Zealand's economy is highly dependent on the prosperity of Pacific people as well, which includes Pacific business ownership. So we recognise that now it's time for us to actually act.
I think on that note we'll shuffle off stage. I'd like to thank all of the panel members. I found it really, really interesting. I've read the report, so I sort of knew what was coming. Also thank you guys for your attention. I saw a couple of eyelids over there start to go down, but everyone stayed alert and awake, so thank you very much. Hopefully you found it interesting. Thanks.
Thank you again, Scott, Bernadette, Dion, and Preston. Our next and final panel will call in about Topline findings of Auckland's Pacific Business Export and Trade Research. So as they make their way on stage, this research was commissioned to bridge the evidence gap to generate robust data on the export readiness and global potential of Auckland Pacific enterprises to unlock growth pathways, identify scalable opportunities to support economic diversification by leveraging Pacific innovation, creativity, and enterprise. Sarah, is this a challenge at how good my England is? 3, advance high-value exporting, contribute to the government's going for growth agenda by broadening the base of high-value Pacific exporters. 4, inform policy and practice, document the systemic barriers and trade pathways currently limiting corrections of the script. Pacific business growth. Sam Kailani is a writer-producer of Kingston Productions. You have Eleanor Murphy, Group General Manager, Freight Direct New Zealand Limited. Namula Ulu Nuali Etera Rafaele, Founder and Director, Head of AI and Culture, Fiber Fale, also TikTok's biggest shareholder. We also have Glenn Murphy, Commercial Engagement Lead, Accelerate New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, and here to facilitate the panel, our big leading on to Ana Raf Erika, Research Lead. Please make them welcome.
Thank you. I swear it feels the best dressed awarding, doesn't it? One day, every day. Thank you, Taito, for that. Thank you for the introductions. So ECG were commissioned to do this research piece. So it's just around Pacific business export and trade. And so I thought just to provide a bit of context, I'll just share some top-line themes, top-line findings initially, and then I'll just invite some of the panelists and I'll just pull them in and they'll just share some of their insights and give some of their valuable feedback on the questions they were proposing. So some of the top-line themes at this stage is there is no or limited data that specifically targets specific business exports, and access to vital data is highly restricted or difficult to navigate. It's interesting, I'm dying to see, I haven't seen that quantifying report, so it'll be interesting to see if there are elements of that in there. Particularly the definition and recognition of the informal export economy is critical for understanding the Pacific business landscape. Leveraging cultural identity and digital creativity are areas for future export growth, and businesses in their creative economy in most cases require international partnership and high capital investment to penetrate the international market. So these are just some high-level themes that kind of resonate right across given the level of engagement that we've done and the literature review that we've undertaken. So firstly, just to kickstart us, I thought I'll bring Ellie into the conversation. So Ellie's obviously in the freight forwarding space, and for me personally, I've always seen freight forwarding as like the prophets of the economy, because they're the ones that kind of see the goods come in, out, the volume over specific time frames before the economists and before anyone gets the opportunity to give any sort of analysis. It's the freight forwarding crowd. They kind of see what comes in, what goes out. So on that, in the space that you operate within, Ellie, given your seniority, what are you seeing? What are you seeing in terms of Pacific businesses? What are they exporting at the moment, and where are they looking to export at this stage?
I think it's an interesting dynamic and a good question, and back to the panel that was on prior to me. A lot of the information driven is probably around new registrations of businesses, how long they last, they can work from prices of. When it comes to international freight and how we become very focused on the target market, we look at container utilisation. So high level as well, but slightly different, our lens. So when we look at container utilisation, is how many full containers are going out of the country, air freight as well, paid, unpaid. When I say paid, is commercial cargo to the Pacific that gets sent over for the shops, the dairies, the government. When I say unpaid, it's passenger cargo. So we split it and kind of get our numbers from that. What we see, or what I've seen in the 20 years, is the trade has changed significantly. But when I say it's changed, in the past, a lot of that data wasn't captured because how we look at business is very different. The Pacific doesn't have a welfare system, so our welfare system comprises of us sending stuff back to the islands. Now, as such, it's changed over those 20 years where a lot of our people are now growing produce in the Pacific. So containers are coming back, the vessels used to come back empty. So we weren't sending anything from the Pacific into New Zealand. Now what we see is a high number of reefers. And if you're not from logistics here, I actually don't see a lot of people here from logistics. So Sarah, maybe I'll give it an invite list for the next round. But with reefers, they're fridge containers. And in there you'll see the taros, the yams, the kava, all that kind of stuff. And that's a lucrative market for us Pacific people. Now, that trade is predominantly from a person to a person, and that's the informal market we're talking about. So if you look at the customs stat, you'll see that that tariff, the HS code, is actually quite high. So we trade very differently. It's not captured in terms of business registration, it's captured in terms of family to family. So our thought process in terms of entrepreneurship and trade is very different. And as such, how it's designed and the paradigm of it is very different from, respectfully, Western definition. In saying that, the growth thing has been huge. So one main shipping line into the Pacific used to only call into Tonga once. So it would go stop into Fiji, because Fiji is our major trading partner. I think a couple of years ago when I saw it as a $1 billion trade revenue, that's fantastic for the islands. That's great. Fiji are only, I think, 850,000 population. So to peak at 1 billion is an amazing goal. And the next target is 2 billion. This shipping line now falls into Tonga first, because the informal market is quite high, what we call personal effects. It's not actually personal effects. What it is you probably see a lot of second-hand goods around New Zealand that get sent over to the Pacific and then sold to market, because the price for selling is matching from probably what the Chinese can buy in the islands straight from China. So it actually makes the market competitive in the Pacific. So that contributes as a whole
to the Auckland economy, but also the New Zealand economy. A little bit tough now, and the reason why I say Auckland specifically is because these vessels are not calling into the South Island yet. That is not Wellington, that is not Christchurch, so our numbers are completely derived just from an Auckland-based vessel, and that's all shipping lines. Air freight is slightly different because the connectivity with Air New Zealand, they dominate about 90% of the air freight space into the islands. Very different numbers there. But in terms of the import market, we were talking about it, Ralph, it's actually quite high. How we contribute to the Auckland economy is actually still quite high. It's just we capture it very differently. So I would probably really like to look at that research and see how we can dive deeper into it in combination with the maritime numbers, containerisation, types of containers, the value of those containers, because if it's from people to people, or sorry, person to person, the values are very different. And it is not registered, but you can probably draw that data from how many export licenses have been given, client codes. And there you will extract, I think, probably more accurate numbers about how we contribute to the Auckland economy.
Nice. So that's really good to know, Ellie. So obviously you're saying that there's high activity, whole lot of exporting, but again, that it's invisible in terms of the traditional data capturing mechanisms and processes in place at this stage. And I like what you're saying just around, there is a whole lot of activity and there is a lot of businesses that are trading in and out of the country. And on that, just around that trade, there has been, from recent engagements, there has been, I guess, a perception that NZTE is only really interested in working with large-scale exporting capable companies. So I guess over to you, given your vast experience and the time you've done in terms of the international markets and working for NZTE, how accurate is this perception, and how do you, given the activity that Ali was sharing about, what are the initiatives and programs that the NZTE have that can support Pacific businesses looking to export?
Thank you. Look, first of all, I just want to say a huge appreciation to Auckland Council and to Sarah and team for inviting New Zealand Trade Enterprise to be part of this morning's Tamanoa. I think one of the things that has surprised me as I've been involved with Pacific trade over the last 5 years has been that international trade and trade between the Pacific nations, including New Zealand, and that often gets left out of the discussion, and it is incredibly important in terms of the connection and business being done between the nations. And so, big appreciation for being here for a start. I think, and Ralph and I have had a little chat about this before, but there is a myth that kind of is out there in the world that NZTE does not work with smaller companies. So I just want to put that to bed straight away. We work with any company that is serious about being an international business and taking your products and services internationally. We work with 5,500 companies that are internationalising. And if you do simple math, you know we don't have 5,500 big companies in New Zealand. And so, we work with a lot of companies that are well below $3 million of revenue. They might have zero international revenue, and we will start working with them to help them on their international journey. How do we do that? I think one of the things where I do think people or businesses come to work with us and perhaps do get disappointed is that we are not a funding agency. We do not have money to give to a business. So if you come to New Zealand Trade Enterprise looking for some money, you will be disappointed because we don't have it. So, that then begs the question, well, what do we do? And that's pretty simple, is that we help businesses, we guide businesses in how to internationalise. We help them make connections in the markets that they're targeting to export to, and we provide further guidance around growth once they're in those markets. And so if I think specifically about Pacific, and I used to, until recently, I was in Sydney and I ran the Australia and Pacific region for NZTE. We have a team of 40 people in Australia Pacific. 7 of those people make up our Pacific working group. And so we have a really strong focus on what we're doing in the Pacific. We have a wonderful trade commissioner for the Pacific based in Suva, Kathy Cooksey-Little, and we have an incredible business development manager currently based in Rarotonga, Dave Dewar. So we have people based in the islands who are in those nations who are working across Pacific, guiding. We're working with anything, normally around 50 businesses at any one time, helping them to do good business in the Pacific. The other thing I just do want to shout out to, Sarah, I think you mentioned earlier your father from Ratuma is in the island. So we have an initiative called Pacific Project Link, which helps businesses of any size get involved in projects that are being funded by the development banks or other aid funding. And Sina Mario, who runs that service for us and is part of our team, is a Ratuman. And so I just thought I'd shout that out for you.
Awesome, thanks for that, Glenn, and thanks for, debunking that myth and then providing just an, open dialogue for Pacific businesses and those connected to the Pacific business community, that there is opportunity and that there is an appetite for engagement. We spoke about the connections in the Pacific, which is great, and on that, right across the board, we spoke of the various 5,500 businesses that right across New Zealand are operating and are looking to get into the space. So thinking on that with the 5,500 businesses, diversity of industries and sectors. One of them was the creative sector, and on that, Tina has just brought in a box office of approximately 6.5 million to date, and has the widest release of any New Zealand-made film, including Australia, US, Canada, and the Pacific Islands that you spoke on. So over to you, Sandra. Just given the the scale of that and the wide reach, and that this is an export product in terms of a Pacific one, what do you believe are some key creative factors that have led to the wide export of this film, and how can Pacific businesses build off this momentum and run with it?
Thank you, Ralph, for that. That's a big question. Hands up who's seen Tina? Wow, it's indicative of why it's made close to 10 million actually. But that's 10 million, and it probably took 5 to 7 years to create and to bring to the big screen. So everyone's asking now, when's the next Tina? And I don't know, because it takes so long to do that. But it does show that a story that's created by Pacific people, about Pacific people, for Pacific people, but not only for Pacific people, but for a wider audience, really does resonate. And when you think about the top 10 films in New Zealand's history, 7 of them are from Māori and Pasifika creatives. So we know how to make good stuff. It just takes a long time to make it. And I want to acknowledge some of the powerhouses who are in the industry here, Sunpix Limited, Nairi Fuata, who's been doing the D for a long time with Tangata Pasifika, because that's where it starts. It starts from being able to make content and being able to do that with creatives. But in terms of how do we take that, it's an interesting one, because critically, if you were to look at Tina, it didn't make any of the A-list film festivals around the world, but it certainly made a hit here in New Zealand. So when we're thinking about making products or creative stories, we also have to work out what is success for us. So success is about audience, Or is it about critical? Is it about both? Is it about innovation? And I think Pacific creators are incredibly innovative. We just don't have a lot of money. And what we need to do here is, unfortunately, in New Zealand, the way that we're set up, we are funding dependent, and we all have to compete against each other. And that's the reality, because if we didn't have funding, we wouldn't be able to survive. And at the moment where the whole of New Zealand is really undergoing a lot of pressures in business and, you know, even in the personal home, we know that it is quite hard to keep going and create. But the love of storytelling, because that's what our history, that's where we come from, as orators, we like to tell our stories, and we know our stories resonate. I remember a long time ago that they would put Tāmaki Pacific on Sunday morning, there's no advertising there, and then they moved us to 11:30 at night because they said that's when our audiences were watching. We are always at the mercy of others. But what I love about Tina, coming back to that, it's taken a story that really hits and resonates, and it's taken it to the world, and I think that's where the exciting prospects are.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Sandra. And I guess thanks for really shedding light that good things really do take time, and that you really, especially for the creative sector, there are a whole lot of moving parts to it, and that to build that momentum, again, there has to be that foresight to see these opportunities. And even like you said, it was targeted at a particular audience, but then exploded in another. So thank you for that, Sandra, and as all of you so far have alluded to, that there are various restraints and limitations when you're looking to export, and there's a whole lot of different barriers that come with export as well. And given the young population of Pacifica and the composition of the future workforce will strongly be Pacifica and Māori, I guess a landscape that is relatively unexplored is the digital one. And the digital creative space, digital entrepreneurial space. One of the beauties of it, obviously, is things like it can, in a way, circumvent some of those international trading agreements, goes around those. And there's a whole lot of different processes that allow those that are in the digital space to speed up, I guess, and to really be far more efficient and more effective in the way they engage and the way they bring in the capital required. So on that, I was just going to say, with Ulu, really pleased to have you here. Given what we've just been talking about, what we've been sharing about, a lot of it has been hard products, hard services. In the experience and what you've been doing with Whakawhale, what do you believe are some of those opportunities in the digital space that Pacifica businesses can really look to position themselves to maximize and export?
Tanofa, bless. Okay, fam, we're going to flip the script today, eh? I'm going to debunk your thoughts on what exports are. But before we go into that, I don't want you to forget me, but I'm Eteroy Gas, Puriro Bread, Salmon Bless, Otara Merchant, Ngati Dine Loved. Now, let's get into it. So, from my perspective, or my POV of technology and AI, we've come into this new phase, or actually we've been existing in this new phase of weightless IP and data. So we've been operating in this ground for a very long time. Now the key word is weightless. What does weightless mean? It means we don't actually have containers. We don't actually have regulations that we deal with international borders. The only thing we're actually passing over overseas is our IP, our knowledge, and our data. So that's been something that we've been operating. Now, while we say this gives us an advantage, because we think about this. We're at the edge, or we've already known this, that we're at the edge of value in like supply chains for labor. With this, we can actually move and shift and become the owners of these supply chains. But did you know, what you should know, is that if we do
nothing. Example, if we don't actually invest in capability and Pasifika data and Pasifika IP, we are already going to and continue to have the existing inequities get bigger and bigger. And guess who has to pick up those inequities? The future of our Pasifika people, that 25 and under, your children, your grandchildren, and your generations to come. So, when we think about this, especially back to the questions, how can we actually be involved? How can we participate in this digital economy? I'll give you some quick facts. Can I hear quick facts? Quick facts! Oh, come on, it can't be number 4. Can I hear quick facts? Quick facts! That's right, quick facts. Now, in Aotearoa, the tech export is third in all of like Aotearoa. So the biggest export in Aotearoa, the third in place is technology. They come following after tourism and also dairy. Now, in Aotearoa, especially in Tāmaki Makaurau, we kind of make up nearly half of the tech revenue exports that come into Aotearoa. So that's ranging around 10.5, 10.8 billion. Can I hear a oh my gosh? Oh my God. That's right, I know, right? Period. Now, as we think about it now, in Aotearoa and our tech exports, we're making 10% and it's growing faster and faster. Right now, when I'm speaking, the air's coming out of my mouth. That's another 10%. But think about that. That's heaps. Now, it's already predicted that AI is going to bring 108 billion into our digital economy here in Aotearoa. Who's going to be majority in our community in Tāmaki Makaurau? Brown and beautiful. And we have to remember that. But the question is, are we participating in this digital economy? And how do we do that? Number 1, you must invest in capability for our Pasifika people. Who do you need to look for? Look no further. I drove all the way from Flatbush to come all the way here. 501 has been doing the game for a long time. Before there was an AI strategy in the government, before we were fixing laptops, we were building capability. We are literally the product of the system, but the product of a new system, which is we went and created masterclasses. Here we're not selling them, but it's an example of the customers that we're hitting. Wolf, which is another branch of Fiber Fight, it's an intelligence studio. Our first 2 clients are from the US. So we're not looking, that we can look here, but we have to also know that we have to generate more from overseas to give to our communities here. You know, I was working, goodness, I was working at Zero, and all my customers were the US. Oh God, you got Kingaulu all the time. But the Kingaulu came in a check, and that contributed towards the economy that we see today. Now, investment capability, that's another thing, this might be a bit touchy, but you're awake now. Another thing is that we have to have our councils, our governments, to get various customers to the existing businesses here in Aotearoa. Now, an example is, I used to be in a startup. We got taken in for X amount of money in a government agency. They took us in, and that gave us the opportunity to 1, figure out how to be the best at high quality and be peak performing. 3, how to be world best, because we're dealing with, systems and how infrastructure is. Now, the hard truth is, they let us out. They kicked us out. Now, as a future artist turned 30 today, that took me, amen. All the work you guys put in hard. But when I got taken out of that project because they chose a Big 4, period, that snuck me out for my opportunity to be global best and fostered in Aotearoa. Now, if you think about that, that may be, is this touchy-feely? Nah, we're doing it to ourselves. We're not investing in our own Pasifika digital economy. If you snap me out, imagine the rest that you're snapping out. And so we have to actually have faith and actually invest in our own in order to get there. Because really, to wrap up my cool story, if we do not invest capability in our Pasifika people and our economy, we're already getting snuffed out by automation. 60% of our Pasifika people are getting kicked out because of these automations. I went to the IKEA blessing yesterday, and I went inside IKEA and I saw all these automated belts. In my head I go, dang, We need to be behind and in front of those bouts and be the controllers, the creators of these things, so that we can have more of our people in here, but boost the digital economy. Now, you want more now and after? Talk to us later. But really, I hope that was thought-provoking, because if not, I'll keep doing my job and you'll keep calling me to come back again.
And again, just thank you to everyone here. I'm sure I've got time for, because when I look, I was going to have a few more questions, but I just look at the composition of this panel. There's so much knowledge, so much wisdom here. So I'm sure it's okay if we can have. Is there like one? I'm sure we can have one question from the audience. Is there anyone here with a dying question that's looking to ask a question? You've got these 4 people that are heavily involved. Right across the board, is there, especially in the export space, in export and trade, is there anyone here that has a question that they'd like to ask before we wrap up? Question? Oh.
My last end, if you're not going to ask a question, is if we treat our Pacifica people as the engine of R&D, the types of exports that will come out would be amazing. We won't need to be wishful thinking. We also need to remind ourselves we're not going to be the minority soon. So how can we impact and create change, not just in the digital economy, but especially this economy too? Whātai.
So just a quick plug in, because this is quite a very big ball in sectors that you've got on the stage. In terms of trade and development and trade facilitation, regardless of what level you're on, right? If you take tech, and I say words like Temu, and I say words like Shein, I know you all know Shein and Temu, right? The trade has changed in 20 years. When I first started, we had runners. So I was a runner, so I worked in the warehouse. I drive a forklift, my license is expired, but that's how I started. But in terms of trade and development and how we can contribute to this economy, is think smart, be creative. I do the same in business, in terms of whatever I oversee, is how you shift your money around. And I say that respectfully, because how we think about money as specific people is very different, right? It could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. But you've got to be creative on how you shift money around. And I say Temu and I say Shein because cross-trade has developed significantly in the Pacific. When I say that, it is bypassing Auckland. So it is coming straight from overseas, captured into an underground warehouse, and then out into the Pacific. So we don't even touch it. So we get no money out of it. You might get a little bit in terms of the GST, possibly, but if it's bonded properly, you actually don't get any GST. I make money, I move it. I don't have to be anywhere. So in terms of that, and if you're in business and you're wanting to grow and you're wanting to do better, be creative on how you manage things around and pull from different levers, talk to different people. This is a great opportunity, Sarah, that you created across the board with what and who you've got here. Something I've encouraged in my 20 years is that try and dig deep with the people around you and see how better we can do it in terms of turning something, an idea, into a billable revenue. And when I say billable revenue, historically with Pacific businesses, and you'll see this in data, we're also very good at losing business and going under, right? And the reason being is a healthy mindset is an ROI, return on investment. There is nothing wrong with making money. What does that look like? Talk to the right people, change that mindset. You can help a village, but you've got to probably teach a person to fish first. But that would just be my key takeaway when it comes to trade and development.
Thank you, Sandra. Anything finally you want to share?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next red, white and brass that's going to come out on the screen. I'm looking forward to one. Yeah, there isn't one yet, but maybe I'll go try and start that. But what I really am excited about in the creative space when it comes to storytellers and those that could be in the art space. I know we've got Margarita here, but also in the film space and the television space, is that as we evolve as Pacific people, so will our stories. So we've got our stories from being first generation, our grandparents coming over, but we've also got the stories of what it's like to be New Zealand born now, under 25. And we're seeing a lot of that come through with different companies starting themselves up, and they might be just like one person. Like myself, Kingston Productions is one person, but you bring in people. And you know, for the Auckland economy, film work contributes $1.7 billion. Out of that 1.7 billion, very, like, not even 1% is Pacific. So we need to keep growing and telling those stories, being brave, being bold, like anyone that's in business, but also getting out there and telling those stories because we know they work and people love them and they can resonate. And the next part for us is globally. So we go to international festivals and the films do very well there. We want to be able to have A-list films that make a lot of money, that bring, give the companies opportunities to bring more people in and grow the economy, and just continue to do that. So it's an exciting space, but we all have a role to play, whether it is in logistics and freight forwarding, into telling stories, into tech, which is an exciting space. Definitely, and I think when I was at the session that Bernadette was at yesterday, and Treasury said that currently 1 in 12 people are Pacific, but by 2048, I think it is, 1 in 5 will be Pacific in New Zealand. So we know we've got a role, and we've also got a place. So I leave that challenge to everyone.
Thank you, Sanja. Finally to you, Glenn, any
just following up on what I said earlier, I'd just say to any business that's here in the room, if you are interested in exporting to the Pacific, just come and talk to us, please. We haven't got money, as I said, but what we do have is guidance, knowledge, connections that can help you, and we can help you figure out how much money you do need and where you might get it from. So thank you.
Glenn, can I just ask a question? Kelly and I were just talking. You can't give us money, but can you tell us where it is? Good.
You're the closer.
Really? Okay, please. I think it's really important to note that, we're in a period where, we know our communities are either using AI or if not, they're scared of it, but we have to actually be the front or the lead for our communities to actually implement. Because, I talk about participate. Man, for our Pacific communities and future businesses, because here's the thing, not many AI businesses or not many SMEs in the outset or use AI. We had to go and train them in the Wellington business chamber. But this is also an indicator that we all have to at least care. And we actually have to change our mindsets and move into this new way so that we, one, don't end up being behind the curve, but two, so we can actually see prosperity for our Pacifica people and businesses here. We're going to have many future reports in the future. Let's start putting more of these numbers of influence and participations of our Pacifica businesses in the digital economy. Because if it's not us, it's never going to be. And then if we do come into the economy, let's start really making change for the future as well.
Awesome. Cool. So again, just on behalf of Sarah and the team, just thank you to all of you panelists. Thank you again for sharing your insights, your wisdom, your knowledge, and obviously your networks and connection. So let's give them a big hand, everyone.
Thank you, Sanja, Eleanor, Glenn, Namla Uru, and Leo Pepe. We've now come to the end of our morning together, so on behalf of the team, Sarah, Candy, Dion, thank you for making time to be here. On behalf of all gathered here, thank you, Sarah, Candy, Dion, for the countless hours that you've poured into orchestrating today, for the brilliant lineup, and for all that you do. Again, congratulations on Ikuna, definitely a jewel in the crown. Folks, many insights, many challenges, much complexity, and much work to be done. Concerning the growth of Auckland's Pacific economy, the proverbial expression of the Samoan people, e fofo e leala mea, comes to mind. A proverb that describes the crown of thorns, starfish. Spiky on one side, spongy on the other. One designed to harm, the other to heal. A sting from the starfish's sharp spines can be soothed by the soft side, offering relief from the pain it caused. Channeling today's hui, the duality of harm and healing is a metaphor for community-driven problem solving. The solutions to our community's challenges, and in particular around economic prosperity for Pacifica people, are found within our community itself. We are the ones we have been waiting for. There are 3 national languages in New Zealand. They're Māori, English, Sign Language. In case you don't know, there's 3 national anthems. There's E Hoa, there's Oie, and the third one, which we will end with today, E Ki Koe O Whaha'au. So lead us in our closing hymn. I'd like to invite Port of Auckland Pacific champions to the stage to sing hymn 114. And then I'd also like to invite Pastor Misiri Filoa to give a closing lotu. If you do know the hymn, please, just channel positive vibes and let these guys sing it.
Hey,